I still remember the exact moment I realized my sister didn't want me at her engagement party. It wasn't like she sent me a no invitation or anything blunt like that. It was much worse. It was the silence. The way my phone stayed eerily quiet for days while everyone else got those shiny, colorful invites with all the frills and glitter. The kind that screamed, "You belong here, and you better show up looking perfect." Except me. Nothing. It all started a few weeks before the big day. I had been quietly checking my mailbox every morning, hoping to find at least a scrap of paper with her name on it. A text message, an email, maybe even a Facebook event invite. But no. My birthday was months away, yet here I was feeling as if I was already being erased from family events like some unwanted footnote. My name is Jennifer, and for as long as I can remember, I was the invisible sister. My older sister, Melissa, had always been the shining star, the one who could do no wrong. Everyone loved her. Mom, Dad, distant relatives, even that weird lady down the street who never spoke to me but greeted Melissa with a smile. I was just the other one. The one who didn't make the cut. The one who wasn't worth the effort. So when Melissa got engaged to some guy named Kevin, it felt like the final nail in my coffin of family relevance. I wasn't surprised that I didn't get an invite. Maybe I wasn't even supposed to know there was a party at all. But here's the thing. I'm not the kind of person who accepts being erased without making a little noise about it. I first heard about the engagement party from my mother, and that's when the reality hit me like a punch to the gut. "Jennifer, honey, Melissa's having a small gathering at the new venue downtown. You probably won't be invited. It's a private party for close friends and family." She said it so casually, like she was announcing the weather. "Not invited," I repeated under my breath, tasting the bitterness of those words like a sour pill. I wanted to scream, cry, plead, but I held it all inside. I knew better than to expect a change of heart. After all, I had been invisible for years. But I was curious. And that curiosity turned into an obsession. I started asking around discreetly. Which venue was it? Who was hosting? What time? Every little detail mattered. And thanks to a few sympathetic friends, I found out it was at the Grand Oak Hall, a new place downtown that had been all the rage lately. The thing was, I had a history with that venue. A secret history. About 6 months earlier, I had been struggling to pay the bills. I worked a modest job as an event planner assistant, but that barely covered rent and groceries. One day, while scrolling through a local auction website, I saw an ad. The Grand Oak Hall was up for sale. The owners were retiring, and the place had been shut down for months. I almost didn't click on it. It looked like a long shot. But something inside me said, why not? What if this was my chance to finally step out of the shadows? I scraped together every penny I could, took out a small loan, and with some determination and a little bluffing, I became the proud owner of the Grand Oak Hall. I never told anyone. It was my secret weapon, my ace up the sleeve. So when I found out that Melissa had booked my venue for her engagement party, without even telling me, my mind raced. That was it. That was my moment. I could show up to that party, but not as the sister they wanted to ignore. No. I would show up as the owner of the venue. The one who controlled everything. The one who held the keys. I spent the days leading up to the party planning my move. I told no one. I didn't want any leaks or second guessing. I even dressed up in a sharp black suit, something Melissa never imagined I could pull off. I rehearsed my lines in the mirror, perfecting my surprised but in control face. The night before the party, I checked the guest list again, at least the parts one could get. My name was nowhere to be found, of course. And there was a picture of Melissa and Kevin, grinning like they had the whole world in their hands. That was when I realized something. This wasn't just about being left out. This was about respect. About being recognized as someone who mattered. I went to sleep with a plan burning in my head, knowing the next day would be the one where the tables turned. When I arrived at the Grand Oak Hall on party day, everything was in full swing. Waiters gliding across the floor with champagne glasses, laughter echoing from the ballroom, and Melissa, glowing in her dress, surrounded by friends and family. She looked radiant, the kind of radiant that says, "Everything is perfect without you." I waited in the shadows at first, watching. Then, when the time was right, I strode to the front desk. The staff recognized me instantly. After all, I was the one who signed their paychecks. I announced loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "Hello, I'm Jennifer, the owner of this venue. I'm here to make sure everything runs smoothly tonight." The chatter stopped. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Melissa's smile faltered for a split second. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. But I wasn't done yet. I continued, "I noticed there might have been some oversight in the guest list. I'm here to personally welcome everyone, including those who might have been accidentally left out." The party was suddenly buzzing with confusion. A few guests looked at me like I was a movie villain stepping onto the scene. And then, it happened. Melissa walked up to me, her voice sharp but controlled. "Jennifer, what are you doing here?" I smiled sweetly. "I'm making sure the party goes as planned. After all, it's my venue. And I think the guests deserve to know who's really in charge." Her eyes narrowed. "This isn't your party. You weren't invited." I raised an eyebrow. Neither was I. That line hung in the air like a challenge. The tension was palpable. But the night was just beginning. The room was silent for a heartbeat, then the murmurs began, like a wave spreading through the crowd. Guests glanced between Melissa and me, sensing the drama unfolding but unsure what to expect next. It was like I'd just dropped a bomb in the middle of their carefully curated party. Melissa's perfectly painted face tightened, the smile now completely gone. Her eyes flashed with a mix of disbelief and anger, but also something else, maybe fear? I wasn't sure yet. And that uncertainty was delicious. "Jennifer," she said slowly, as if tasting my name for the first time, "this isn't the place for your little stunts." "Oh honey," I replied, voice dripping with sarcasm, "if this is a stunt, it's one I've been rehearsing for months." I took a step closer, making sure everyone could see I was no longer the ignored sister. "You see, owning the venue means I'm not just an uninvited guest. I'm the one who holds the keys to this entire event. And that includes the guest list." Some guests shifted uncomfortably, whispering to each other. I caught a few familiar faces, friends of Melissa's who barely looked at me when I passed, suddenly giving me a polite nod or an uncertain smile. I could feel their minds racing. What was Jennifer going to do next? Melissa crossed her arms, clearly trying to regain control. "You're making a scene. Please leave before you ruin everything." Ruin everything? I almost laughed. The truth was, Melissa had already ruined everything the moment she decided I wasn't worth inviting. But I held back. I wanted to savor this moment, the slow unraveling. "Ruining?" I echoed softly, "I'm here to fix things. Or maybe just to shake things up a bit." I glanced around the room, letting my eyes rest on each face. It's not every day the invisible sister shows up as the boss. I could see her jaw clench. Melissa was never the confrontational type. She preferred to wield her power quietly, behind whispered conversations and carefully arranged parties. But tonight, that all changed. One of the waiters, clearly nervous, approached me quietly. "Ms. Jennifer, the catering team is ready for the cake cutting. Should I proceed?" "Please do," I said with a smile. "And make sure the photographer is ready. I want this night documented properly." Melissa's eyes narrowed. "You think showing up as the owner is enough to get your way? You don't control anything here." I leaned in just slightly, voice low but firm. "Actually, I do. The contracts, the permits, the staff payroll, all under my name. And let's not forget security. If anyone tries to ask me to leave, I'll just have them escorted out." That was the turning point. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The guests looked less like an audience and more like participants in an unfolding story. Melissa's fiancé, Kevin, stepped forward, his smile a little forced. Jennifer, maybe you should leave before things get awkward. I fixed him with a cool stare. Awkward? Maybe. But honest. Something you might want to think about, Kevin. He scoffed and moved back, muttering something under his breath. I didn't catch it, but it didn't matter. His presence was a reminder that Melissa's perfect world was not as perfect as it seemed. At that moment, the lights dimmed, and the music started, a slow, elegant tune signaling the cake cutting. Everyone gathered around the table, the giant white cake shining under the soft lights. Melissa's smile returned, albeit forced. She picked up the knife, ready to slice into the symbol of her perfect engagement. But I had a surprise planned. I tapped the microphone, which the staff handed to me with a curious look. Excuse me, everyone, I said, voice carrying clearly over the murmurs. Before Melissa cuts that cake, I have a little announcement. The crowd hushed, sensing something was about to happen. I want to thank you all for coming here tonight. It means a lot to Melissa and Kevin, though, funny enough, it seems I wasn't important enough to be invited. A few gasps. Some confused looks. I continued, but that's okay. I'm here now, and as the owner of the Grand Oak Hall, I think it's only fair to remind everyone who really made this night possible. I let that sink in. Melissa's face drained of color. I held up a piece of paper, a copy of the contract showing my name as the owner. For months, I worked tirelessly to keep this place alive, to make sure it could be the perfect spot for events like this. And yet, I wasn't good enough to be included. I glanced at her. So tonight, I'm not just the owner of this venue. I'm the sister you forgot to invite. And I'm here to remind everyone that family isn't just about who shows up with gifts or fancy dresses. It's about respect. The room was silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. A heavy, uncomfortable silence filled with realization. Melissa looked like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. I stepped back and smiled, not the fake kind, but the one that comes from knowing you've won the first round. That's when the security manager approached me quietly. Ms. Jennifer, if you want, I can give you a tour of the venue and show you some upgrades we can do together. I nodded, feeling the power shift finally settling around me. As the night went on, I watched as guests started to look at me differently. The invisible sister had arrived, and she wasn't going anywhere. But deep down, I knew the real game was only beginning. The engagement party carried on, but the atmosphere had changed completely. No longer was I invisible. No longer was I the forgotten sister. I was the woman who owned the venue, the one who controlled the night. And Melissa? She was shrinking in her perfectly pressed dress, watching me take over the room with a calm that only comes from someone who knows the game and plans to win it. I made sure to circulate, chatting with guests, complimenting the food, and casually reminding the staff to keep everything running smoothly under my watchful eye. Every smile, every surprised glance from Melissa felt like a victory. But the best part was yet to come. You see, owning the Grand Oak Hall meant I had access to everything, including the contracts and bookings for the next year. And Melissa's little engagement party was just the beginning. As the party wound down and guests started to leave, I invited the main event planner, a nervous woman named Claire, to the side. Claire, I said with a smile, how about we talk about renewing your contract for next year? I'd love to have you manage all the events here, including Melissa's wedding. Her eyes widened. Of course, Jennifer. It would be an honor. I nodded. Great. Just one thing you should know, I'm making some changes. And that includes Melissa's wedding plans. Claire swallowed hard. What kind of changes? I leaned in, voice low enough for just her to hear. Let's just say the wedding won't be happening here unless Melissa extends a personal invitation to her sister, me. Claire looked shocked but nodded quickly. I understand. Meanwhile, Melissa was nowhere to be found. I caught her sneaking out the back door, probably to call Kevin and plot her next move. But I wasn't done with her yet. I decided to send her a little message. The next day, I emailed her a copy of the contract, along with a polite note reminding her that any future events at the Grand Oak Hall would require my approval. Then, just to make sure she understood the message, I included a clause that said any unauthorized guests would be subject to removal by security. It didn't take long for the news to spread. The family group chat exploded with messages. Some were shocked, some angry, some begging me to soften up. But I didn't respond. I just sat back and watched as the drama unfolded. And then, the real icing on the cake. Melissa's wedding was scheduled for 6 months later, at my venue, as planned. But when the day arrived, things went differently than she imagined. Because before she could walk down the aisle, she got a call from me. "Melissa," I said, voice calm and clear, "I'm afraid your wedding here is on hold. Until you formally invite your sister, the one who owns this place." There was a long silence on the other end. Then a flurry of calls and frantic messages. Her fiancé called me too, begging for a compromise. But I stood firm. The wedding planners and caterers were already on standby, and the venue was ready to go, but without my blessing, no event would happen. In the end, Melissa had to swallow her pride. She sent me a formal invitation, yes, to me, the sister she had tried to erase. I accepted. And on her wedding day, I wasn't just a guest. I was the owner, the sister, and the woman who had turned the tables. The look on her face when I walked down the aisle, dressed not in white, but in a sharp suit that screamed success, was priceless. She couldn't hide the surprise. Neither could her guests. And as she realized that the sister she ignored had become the one holding all the power, I smiled quietly to myself. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't drama or shouting. It's showing up when they least expect it, owning the room, the venue, and the moment. And that night, I finally took back what was mine.